how to find your competitive advantage. This is not a microeconomics or a macroeconomics lesson. This is not going to be a lecture. This is literally just finding the thing that will give you an advantage over your competition, that will make you better than everyone else, that is kind of unfair in a way, but you have it, so you might as well leverage it because everyone else is leveraging their own talents, their own skills. This is how you find it. This isn't scientific. This is not based off of empirical evidence. This is literally based off of what I have found through my journey and through my experience of life. So, the first thing you need to do is figure out what your disadvantages are. First, before you figure out what your advantages are, you need to know what you're not advantaged by. You need to know what you're not good at. And to do that, you need to ask yourself, okay, what are my disadvantages? Chances are you're pretty well aware of this. You probably are pretty keen on the things that you're not necessarily good at. And I just identify them, no matter how awkward they feel to look at them, look them in the eye, write them down, and then avoid them. It's that simple. Like literally know what your disadvantages are, no matter how much you don't want to have to deal with them. Most of your disadvantages are your disadvantages, and there's not really much you can do about them unless you actively make it a priority to reframe them and shift them towards the advantages side. But for now, you have certain disadvantages that you have, and you just need to shift them to the other side and not fall into the trap. Like you don't want to have to rely upon them. You want to avoid your disadvantages. So this is kind of the principle of inversion that Charlie Munger talks about. Instead of figuring out what to do, find out what not to do, and avoid the mistakes and avoid the opportunity and not avoid the opportunity. Avoid the costs of doing business, wherein you are digging yourself into a hole or falling victim to a pitfall and losing time, losing energy, and losing money. Because to be successful, you just need to avoid mistakes and avoid wasting time and money. That's literally it. And then basically when you avoid making those mistakes, you increase the likelihood that you will be making more successful and correct decisions. And downstream from that, your decisions will stack up and create an ultimate level of success. And so this is how you find your competitive advantage, right? When you've inverted your perceptions of your and you know what your disadvantages are, then you're left with a selection of advantages that you can choose from. And from these, just double down, leverage them as much as you can, and use them to figure out what you can do to like beat everybody else, right? How can you really squeeze out the effectiveness of this advantage, right? What can you do to just be better? What can you do to have that advantage over everyone else, right? Find those inflection points and double down on them, because that will be your actual competitive advantage. And when you stack them up properly, when you stack up this ability to actually compete and this ability to use your unique skills and talents in your favor, you really build the muscle. You build the muscle of somebody that knows what to not do and knows exactly what to do to gain the most advantage and to gain the most leverage. And in a world where most people don't know what they're good at, don't know what they're bad at, or are too fearful and insecure to face their fears and their insecurities and their disadvantages, you will have an incredible competitive advantage just by being able to do this audit, just by having the courage to face your disadvantages and accept the fact that you're not going to be good at everything, and that's okay. Because there are things you are good at, and you can double down on that instead. That will give you an advantage automatically. And then if you're able to then leverage the other skills and talents that you have that do give you an advantage, then you put yourself so much farther ahead than the other guys. You're making progress at an immense like velocity compared to everyone else, and it just gets exponential because you stack up more of these advantages. And then eventually you can then look back at what you inverted, right? Look back at the disadvantages and start to convert them to advantages, right? Start to break down and reverse engineer the disadvantage so that you can shift the frame to it becoming an advantage for you, right? So something that used to hold you back, something that used to limit you, something that used to make you feel discomfort and insecure, now becomes a strength. It becomes another weapon in your arsenal, right? And the only way you're able to do this is whenever you've sufficiently stacked up the advantages you did have, right? Because we all have advantages and disadvantages right now, but if you try to solve the disadvantages and double down on the advantages at the same time, you get nowhere. So that's why I'm telling you to cast aside the disadvantages first, double down on your advantages, stack up the evidence and proof that you are capable of doing what you say you can, and then you can go back and reframe your disadvantages as advantages. It's that simple. That's how you find your competitive advantage. Goodbye.